Representatives from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority were in Queensland this week to hammer out more detail in the plan to return water to the environment and ultimately protect Australia's most important agriculture region. The catchment produces 1/3 of the country's food supply and supports 3/4 of the nation's irrigation. It spans 4 states and hundreds of communities. Reporter Kathy McLeish joined those affected at a meeting in Toowoomba.
Chris Joseph is a grain and cattle farmer and an advocate for his local industry.
I represent the Garryoka Creek irrigators.
This week he made the journey to Toowoomba to find out how the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, or MDBA's plan, will affect him and his neighbours.
If you haven't got a seat at the table, you're on the menu. I've just come along to just to hear what's exactly happening. I didn't have a full understanding of it.
He's one of thousands of Australians who will be affected by the Commonwealth's most recent effort to wind back massive over-allocation of water from the Murray-Darling Basin.
The insecurity of this is devastating.
Public meetings on the last plan were filled with outrage.
There's no irrigation on the Maranoa.
Last year, the Murray-Darling Basin Plan called for 3,000 to 4,000 gigalitres of water to be returned to the environment across the whole system. That was revised to take into account economic and social impacts on communities. In Queensland, the main cuts will come from the Upper Condamine and the Lower Balonne catchments. The Lower Balonne faces cuts of 100 gigalitres to surface water. The Upper Condamine will lose 45% of its groundwater, having a big impact on irrigation. But Queensland farmers say they're ready to move on.
Everyone said, don't throw away the plan, let's go through the process, let's see if we can get it right. And if we can make some changes, if we're involved in the input, then we can have an impact on the final outcome. If we stand back outside and throw rocks and say we've got nothing to do with it, we'll end up with something that we definitely don't want.
This week the authority held a public meeting and discussions in Gundawindi and Toowoomba. There was some good news for the irrigators, with confirmation that there'll be financial compensation. Kim Bremner represents the rural lobby group AgForce. Will there be pain for some growers and producers?
In the longer term there shouldn't be. There will be cuts to the amount of water, but that is, the government says that they will buy that back voluntarily. Obviously the argument will be on what's a fair price, given that there'll only be one major buyer there. They keep changing the rules to sort of try and manage that as we lobby for that to be changed.
It gives me some confidence that the process can and will work in our case, and it's particularly welcome that the federal authorities have come to the table with some money.
Graham Clapham represents irrigators on the central Darling Downs who produce mixed crops, mostly cotton. He says irrigators have been working with groundwater regulations for 40 years.
Long ago, we recognised that we're always better off with a percentage of something than hanging on to 100% of nothing, because if we aren't taking water sustainably, we will drain the system dry.
The authority chief says the new plan recognises the expertise of locals. Craig Knowles says detailed plans will take some time for that reason.
There's a lot of history and a lot of wisdom throughout this basin, and dealing that in rather than leaving it out is part of our plan. I really insist that communities have a say, and if they can bring to the table better ways of doing things, our plan has to respect the ability to do what they need to do.
And Queensland's record on water planning has been recognised.
That history of effort, both in terms of clever ways of using water smarter, a real contribution by people on the land to environmental management, has been very much factored into our plan. There's lots to learn here, and I pay credit to those who have put a hand on that wheel.
He calls them light bulb moments, where they actually find out that the localism idea will work better than what they were thinking. In Queensland, we've done that journey once with the state government, and so our localism was already basically there.
Ian Johnston of the Queensland Farmers Federation says producers want certainty.
I can understand that where Noel's is coming from, he's obviously wanting a bit of a game plan to how that happens. And that's fair enough, and so do we. So that's really what's got to come out of the woodwork fairly quickly now.
The consultation process finishes in a couple of months, and then the plan should be ready to go before the Parliament.
Look, it sounds complicated, but I think long term it's going to work out. Irrigation now and farming is not what it was 10 years ago, not what it was 20 years ago. Things are changing. Whether we like it or not, we've got to change with it, or we've got to get out.